All right, all right. So good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday Times Roundtable, where each week we engage in conversation around current issues, trends, and problems that are of interest to you. I'm Sherry Beeson, your host and Senior Program Coordinator for the Office of Global Learning Initiatives. With me is Anna Prado, also from the Office of Global Learning. She'll be helping facilitate today's session and monitoring the chat to make sure that your questions get answered. Behind the scenes, but never far away, is Taylor Sines, our communications guru, who sends you announcements regarding all things global and your Global Learning Medallion newsletter, The Glow. If you're just now joining us, I'd like to remind you to keep your mic muted during the presentation. And if you feel comfortable doing so, please turn your camera on. However, we are recording today's session, so we understand if you don't feel comfortable doing that. Do post your questions in the chat today. Again, Anna is going to be monitoring those as well as myself. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest hosts who will be talking about photographic storytelling and our stories, summer 2020. First is Andrea Fanta, and she is an associate professor of Latin American literature and culture in the Department of Modern Languages. Let me share that screen with you so you can see her. She is also a faculty fellow at the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab. She's part of the team working on Our Stories, the audiovisual project sponsored by the Honors College and the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab. Next, we have Enrique Rosell. He is the current student program coordinator for the Honors College, where he oversees student events, Parkview housing, honors organizations, the Honors More Than a Major podcast, and community partnerships with the city of Sweetwater. He too is part of the team that is behind Our Stories, the photo reflection project that he and Andrea are going to talk to us about today. Enrique is also an FIU alumni, musician, and film photographer in his free time, although I don't know how he has any, right? So welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for being here to host today's program. And later at the end, there will be some announcements that Anna is going to share with you all. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you guys have that capability.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for the introductions. They're super, super nice. Let me go ahead and start presenting this and we'll jump into it. So thank you all so much for joining today. I know that, there's so much going on in the world right now, and we talk about that. That's one of the reasons we started this project. So, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come hear about this, and I hope that you gain something out of this. So today we're going to be talking, like Sherry said earlier, I want to thank, first of all, Global Learning for having us. We're really excited to be talking about this and telling students about this project. So today we're going to be talking about photographic storytelling, auditory storytelling, and our project, Our Stories FIU, what we did, what it's about, how you can actually become part of the next cohort that we're actually opening applications today. So we're going to talk about all of that today. So if you've ever been interested in storytelling, if you even are kind of interested in cameras at all, if you're kind of interested in just storytelling in general, even a little bit, I think you're really going to like this presentation. So let me go over to the next one. So really quickly, we already got introduced, but this is me and Andrea. But without further ado, since we already kind of introduced ourselves, I'll pass it on over to Andrea so we can start our presentation about photographic storytelling and the Our Stories Summer 2020 photo project.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Anna, for having us here. And yeah, I'd like to begin to tell you a little bit about the story behind Our Stories. So this project began in late spring last year. I had to go over my emails to check back when was the first time that I received an email from Enrique, which we've never met in person.
Yeah, never met.
And it's incredible in these pandemic times, but yeah, that's how it is.
It's really weird because we talk so often.
We do. We share a lot of things. So the idea for Enrique had was to get our students some how do you call them, the camera, disposable cameras, so the students could have them for a few days, take some pictures, and then document what their lives were like during, and this was during the lockdown. So then we started talking, and we developed this full-flown project that involves digital storytelling. It involves all the visual part and all the audio part. So we decided to get the call for applications out, and we did not expect to receive over 80 applications. And they were fabulous from all walks of life, our students. We had to choose only 12 because of budget and time constraints. And at the end, and this was probably at the end of last year, we ended up with 7 full portfolios produced. So that's how it started with an email, and then it ended with 7 portfolios, and everything is on our website now that you can check it out. Enrique.
Oh, yep. Almost
Thank
forgot.
you.
There we go.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what portfolio contains. Basically, each student had a disposable camera with 27 exposures. The student had 2 weeks to take pictures, and this was during the lockdown, as I said. After that, we had to, Enrique developed the film himself and digitize the pictures. We sent the pictures back to the students, and they had to write a 500 word reflection. After that, we recorded the students reading their own written pieces, and they participated in a debriefing interview with Enrique and myself. All of that was recorded, and we produced a podcast. And after that, the Our Stories website was produced, and it contains everything, all the images and the podcast and the reflections that the students wrote. If I ask you to think about the typical audiovisual project, I bet that you would think about a movie, for example, or a video clip. One of the things is that in these instances, the blueprint of the typical audiovisual project, it demands that there is a synchronous reproduction of the image and the sound. So for example, right now you can see me, you can see my image, you can see that I'm speaking, my mouth is opening and closing. So you assume that there's sound coming out of my mouth. And the sound is just like superimposed to my own image, right? So the sound is just mimicking. It's an add-up to the image. But in our project, this blueprint of the typical audiovisual project is dislocated. What we decided to do was, because of the use of the disposable cameras, there was the time got inserted in between the image and the sound, right? So time dislocates this synchronic version of the blueprint of the typical audiovisual project. So the students had the camera for a couple of weeks, but they were not able to see the pictures at all. They had to imagine them. Some students even drew pictures of what they thought the camera had captured. So yeah, it gets completely broken apart. And what we're producing is an asynchronous audiovisual project. The Our Stories project works by, first of all, resisting instant gratification, and that is provided by the delay in the viewing of the image, since the students cannot see the image in the camera itself or modify that image. They're just, they have to wait a very long period of time to see the image, and those images are not modifiable. It also works by encouraging reflective practices, precisely because of that delay, and also because of the written assignment and the interview. And then also by offering first-person accounts and reflections on the human experience. And in this particular pilot project, it was during the summer of 2020. So how does the project does this? And we focus on the personal stories, we focus on the diverse perspectives and the first person accounts. And that is very important, particularly in the world that we live now. Because what we need to go back to is to listen to each other, right? And listen to our neighbors, listen to our family, listen to our communities, and think what in literature we call not the epic, but we call it minimal stories, right? The everyday people. And this project brings us back to this listening to everyday stories, everyday experiences, and to be able to understand what our neighbors are going through, what they're feeling, what they're seeing, how they're experiencing their lives. So we do this by incorporating a delay in the viewing of the pictures, asking for the written assignments, and recording the reflection with our students' voices. And that is very important, because it's not us reading a reflection with our inner voice, but it's being able to listen to someone else reading their own reflections. So our Stories FIU project, it's about documenting the human experience. Obviously, it's a very narrow group of people, but we are beginning, and this is something that we would like to continue through the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab, to start to build a storytelling archive, because we are documenting the experience of our students by creating an audiovisual digital archive.
Awesome. Okay, so now we want to shift a little bit and talk a little bit about what is photographic storytelling. What does this mean? Why should you care about this? But before we even answer this question, I wanted to just take a step back and talk to you guys about why we chose to use film. Like Andrea said, well, first of all, I'm a huge geek. Obviously, I really like this stuff. I think, there's something really beautiful and romantic and nostalgic about, film, and how it's such a difficult process. And like Andrea said, it makes you wait. It makes you, and you can't see it. So you're in the moment. When you take a picture of something on film, you're in that moment. You're not thinking about editing it or putting it up on Instagram immediately. You're taking your time with it, and you're really thinking about what you're taking an image of, because you only have 27 exposures, which limited our students for 2 weeks. They really thought about what they wanted to take an image of and what was representing what they were going through in the summer. But just how they weren't able to see their images. So exactly how kind of this summer was, this crazy, hectic, historic summer, where we didn't even know, what was coming next. We didn't know where this was going to end, how this was going to end, how long we were going to be in this situation. Kind of that same feeling of like not being able to see what's ahead of you. It's kind of the same feeling we wanted to give through the use of film, taking these pictures but not being able to see what these images are going to produce or what they're going to look like. It's kind of like it's not decided yet. You don't know what it is going to be, So that's one of the reasons we wanted to use that. But I also wanted to tell you that, if there's anything that I want you to leave with, this presentation, is whether it's your iPhone, whether it's a digital camera, whether it's a film camera, whether you leave and you buy a disposable camera or a real film camera, I hope you leave this presentation just thinking about photos a different way, and carrying a camera with you everywhere. Even though we all already do that with our iPhones, thinking about, if it's your iPhone, thinking about that iPhone camera in a different context. When I first picked up my first real film camera and took these pictures, I walk around differently now. And that's another thing. One of the reasons that we loved using film for this project is because, in my own experience, now that that I you know, walk around with. I go with the camera everywhere I go. This is my baby here. I take it everywhere. And the beautiful thing about this is that now, before I used to just walk around through life. I would just walk around and see things and live life. But now I'm like constantly overwhelmed with beauty, you know, and that sounds really funny, but I really am. I'm constantly overwhelmed with the way somebody hugged, you know, the person across the street, the way somebody's signaling, you know, somebody across the hallway, the way people are interacting, the way they cross their arms. It really helps you view things differently, think about stories everywhere you go, the way that they surround us. So if you do anything after this presentation, whether it's apply to our actual our next cohort, you know, and you carry that camera around with you for 2 weeks, I hope you continue that and start thinking about what a photograph is and what you can do with it. So first question is, you know, what is a photograph? So before we even go anywhere with this, I want to explain to you, you know, why you should think about applying to our photo reflection, our stories project that's coming up for our spring cohort. So what is a photograph? You know, a lot of the times we might think, you know, a photograph is really simple. It's just an image of an image of something, whatever that may be. It's a really straightforward thing. It just describes something. I wanted to show you one of my favorite quotes by probably my favorite photographer, street photographer, Gary Wintergrand. He says, "A photograph is the illusion of a literal description of how the camera saw a piece of time and space." So Gary Wintergrand takes a picture, takes an image as something really literal, you know, just something that describes a piece of time and space, and that's it, you know. But I want to kind of challenge that a little bit, even though I love that interpretation of what a photograph is. I want to challenge that a little bit because I also think that a photograph can be a lot more than just a description of something. Right. And another thing that I love about film is that the actual piece of film, it's a physical object that you're capturing light on. So you're capturing a light from a specific moment in time and space onto a piece of silver that stays with you forever. So these images that these students took throughout the summer is capturing light onto film. And that's what I think a photograph is, you know. It's capturing this piece of time and space onto, if it's film, onto a physical piece of silver, you know, that stays forever. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that. So why do you take photographs on a day-to-day basis? So I think right now, obviously in the 21st century, in 2021, we use pictures in a different context sometimes, you know. We use pictures to send, you know, memes to our friends. We to make memes out of pictures that we see, like Bernie sitting on a chair, you know, image of him, just the description of that turns into a meme. Or, you know, you can use images when you're at the grocery store, you know, you send a picture of a you know, of a product to your parents or to your friends to make sure that's the right product, you know. So we use photographs in a lot of different ways now. And they could be, you know, a lot of the times I feel like we use photographs kind of like in a really passive way. We use photographs just to it's kind of like a tool. It's kind of like a means to an end, to tell somebody something, to show somebody, to get confirmation from somebody about an object. So, but we don't really think about photos on a day-to-day basis, or at least I didn't, you know, before I started really thinking about photographic storytelling. I didn't think about photos on a day-to-day basis as something that I can use to tell a story, no matter what that may be. So I really want to challenge that and want you to start thinking about what that is. So what is photographic storytelling? Photographic storytelling is the art, and this is just straight up definition of it. So photographic storytelling is the art of conveying stories, ideas, and viewpoints through the medium of photography. It is a great example of how photography is not just the practice of creating visually interesting or stunning images, but is about telling stories, real or fantasized. So I love this description. Also does challenge Gary Wintergrand's quote, even though I do love it a little bit. But I think this definition brings up a really interesting point as well when it comes to photographs and photographic storytelling. So these images that you take of, they could be real. I mean, these stories that you tell through these images, they could be real or they could be fantasized. You know, this could tell your story, or it could tell a story that you think is worth telling that is completely different than your own. You know, and it's just shifting your point of view from thinking of a photograph as just something that describes something to something a lot more than that. You know, like Andrea mentioned earlier, a lot of our students, when they took these images, and we'll show you in a second, when we told them, hey, tell us your story, you know, what you're going through in the summer, that everything is different. We're going through so much. Tell us your story. Some of them, you know, took pictures of abstract objects. Some of them took pictures of objects placed certain ways. They posed images to convey their emotion through this image. Some students took pictures of themselves or had people take pictures of them, you know, to convey what they were feeling and what they were going through. Some people weren't in pictures at all and just took pictures going through their life and going about their day. Right. So there's a bunch of different ways to convey a story through these images. And whether that's your story or a story that you made up, you know, you can create, you know, you can, there's a lot of photographers that, you know, go to studios and create these scenarios to tell a story that they want to convey, you know. So it depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it. The sky is really the limit, but it's just about shifting that mentality into what a photograph is essentially, you know, from its core. What is that photograph? But I love that because it's not just about telling your story. You can go any which ways about it, and that's usually how we think about, you know, different types of media like music or literature. We think about that as telling a story, you know, obviously real or fantasized. But I think that it's also really important to do that through images and really beautiful, you know, when people do this. So now I wanted to look at a few examples. I've talked about Gary Wintergrand a bunch today. He's my favorite, and I recommend that you check out his documentary on Amazon Prime if you have time. But this is one of his most famous images, and I wanted to take a look at this and kind of ask the audience if they want to put in the chat a little bit or unmute. Sorry, my voice is cracked. I'm not 16, I promise. Whatever they might think that this image is saying. Like, what do you think is the story? What are you getting from this image taken in the early 60s, obviously pre-corona? But is there anything that you get out of this image? What do you see here? What do you think? What is the story that you see from here? If you want to drop it in the chat or write in or unmute yourself maybe if they have that power. Anybody have anything they want to add?
I think you can unmute if you want to.
I know we have a little bit of time. Well, if anybody does have something, they can drop it in the chat. Oh, is someone requesting? Awesome. Camila says the lighting behind the women giving them like a ray of light that surrounds them. Really great point. Really great point. So that's a really clear image, a really clear happening. That's something that's happening in the image. That's very clear. Right in the center. Rule of thirds is also happening here. This image is kind of split up into 3 parts, right? So I guess I'll just explain it a little bit more. But yeah, so one of the things that I love about this image is that at first, you know, and this is also just a regular image. You know, you could take this picture walking down the street. You could have seen this image, and that's exactly what happened when Gary Wintergrand took this. He was kind of walking around, saw this scene happening, and took this picture, right? And that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to also always carry a camera, whether you're telling your story or a story that you or a fantasized story. You know, these moments in life, they come in and out of our lives so quickly, and they don't happen for a particular reason, and they don't happen, you know, on purpose, but they happen, and you can pull a story out of these images. You can tell a story out of these moments that come and go so quick from our lives if you have a camera there and you're ready to take the image. So over here, what I see, like Camila said, we have these 3, you know, women. They look really well dressed. They look beautiful. They're coming out of like a ray of light, out of a world of light, right? And we see this young man in a wheelchair sitting in the shadows, right? They're kind of acknowledging his presence, kind of walking towards him. He has his head sunken down. We have the little kid on the side, you know, peering over the side of the bench. His mom doesn't even notice what he's doing, but it's kind of like this symbolism of the world of having, the world of not having, the world of ability, the world of disability, you know, like this poor man standing in the shadows while they're coming out of an entirely different world, completely lit up by light. So there's so much meaning and so much story that you can extract out of a simple image like this, and like I said, that comes and goes out of your life in an instant, you know. So
Sharif and Ron both made comments as well.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Let's see. Charisse said how the picture is slanted is fascinating for me. Great point. So Gary Wintergrand he's famous for that, for the slant. So it kind of gives it like an informal feel. You know, you kind of see it as a like a spur of the moment image. You know, it's slanted. He didn't have time to kind of to straighten the horizon line. I think he at a certain point he started doing it on purpose, but yeah, it gives it like an informal feeling. The women seem to be, Anna said, the women seem to be casually glancing like they see him but don't want to look. Exactly. That's a great point. So kind of So even if they weren't doing that at that moment, that's what I think is so important about images as well. Like this image is an image of these three women, but it's not really about them. You know, it's about what they're doing and what it looks like in context. And that's something that I constantly explain to my sisters, actually, because I take pictures of them sometimes in these really beautiful moments. And then they're like, "Oh, I look ugly in this picture," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but the picture is more than just you being pretty. It's the context of the image in general, you know." But that's a great point. You know, they kind of don't want to look at him. But just for the sake of time, going over to another image. This is another image that I really absolutely love. This is a more modern image. This was taken by a photographer named Andrea Wagner, who's one of my favorites as well. He's early 30s. He lives in Brooklyn in New York. And this image, when he posted it, it was just totally stunning to me. And yeah, I mean, what you can see from this image, this one's a little bit more straightforward. You know, a soul, a black kid, you know, in a sea of people. Most of them, you know, seem to be white as well. So this says so much about you know, what he feels, what he's going through, especially in the context of the time that we're living in right now. But I wanted you to hear a little bit from him. There's a really beautiful podcast. There's also Jeffrey says there's also multiple perspectives and stories from each person in the photo. Great example. Exactly. Like, who knows what she's doing with this smoothie? Where's she going? Who knows what's in this bag? You know, what is this woman doing with her hand on her hip? There's so many like beautiful moments that just happen in these images. Camila, it's more than you just looking pretty. Yes. Yes. I try to explain that to them, but it's difficult. But I wanted you to hear a little bit about what Andre says about this image, because I absolutely love this picture. So this is from,
I mean, this is great to speak about right now.
Can you guys hear that? Yeah? Okay. Tell me if I'm running out of time. I'm trying not to
this photograph I made in Manhattan, which I think is like it's like a staple piece for me in this project that I'm working on.
I'll post it. It's the photo on the right there. It's like a bunch of like white women in Manhattan crossing the street there, and there's this one black kid.
Lone black kid in the middle with this like suitcase. But like, you know, even that picture, I absolutely needed that photograph, and it was crazy because like I was for a while, especially, I mean, more so in the beginning more than as of late. And I don't know, this picture I made a few years ago, but I was really having a hard time wrapping my head around like how to be a black street photographer in Manhattan, because like when you do the research, like, I mean, especially, you know, you do all this research and, you know, all of these great photographers, you know, but like nobody looks like me, you know, from Lee Freelander, Gary Wintergrand, Robert Frank, this, you know, all the New York greats, you know, and like there are black New York greats, but like a lot of that information, it takes a while to dig it up or whatever. And so, and even walking around Manhattan as a black person, I mean, it's New York City and we call it a melting pot, but like you can walk around Manhattan and not see that many black people.
Yeah.
And you know, and so, but it was, something kept telling me that I needed to be here making photographs, you know, and I was having, I don't know, I feel like it was like a whole week. I was just like, why am I here? Like, just go back to Bushwick. Like, why are you here trying to make pictures? But something kept telling me to stay there. And so I kept listening to that. And then, you know, one day I'm on my normal, like 34th Street, you know, making photographs, and, you know, this moment appears, and it's just like, that's exactly what I've been contemplating for so long. Like this long black figure in the middle of just this sea of, you just feel like this otherness, this aloneness, and it spoke so true to just like who I am, and also part of.
Well, just for the sake of time, we'll stop it there. But just looking at this image, you know, it's so beautiful, and like he said, there's so much that he sees in like the story that he's telling, you know, onto this image. You know, this feeling of loneliness, this feeling of otherness, and this feeling of like not understanding, you know, where you fit in the grand scheme of things in New York. You know, it's totally beautiful, and it's totally, in my opinion, that's totally what I get from this image as well, and I totally love it. But that's another point that I wanted to make before we move on. Is that you kind of assign a story to this image as well. So whether you take a picture, like a lot of our students did, and then you take a picture of a specific object that means something to you, or you place it a certain way, or you take a picture of something on the street, that means something to you, that's you're assigning a story to that. You're telling your story through that, and that could be just for you if you want. That could be your story, your picture with the story that you have in your heart, right? Or and then you could show it to somebody. You could show that picture to somebody, and they could assign a completely different story to it. And that's what I think is so beautiful about photographic storytelling as well. It's kind of like songwriting. When a lot of the times when you might hear your favorite artist say, "Oh, I don't really like to explain my music because I like people to assign their own meaning to it." It's the same way, when it comes to photographs. You could assign your own meaning to any of these photographs that are telling a specific story, but this specific image is his story. It's how he feels. Like he said, this is him in this image at this moment. It's not about the people in this image anymore. It's about what this image represents, and it represents Andre in this moment. And that's what I think is so beautiful, and it happened so quick. So always have a camera on you. But then last one I wanted to talk about before we move on. This is an actual picture from our project. This is one of my favorites that a student took. This is from a student named Wenju Chen. And the first time I saw this image after we developed it and scanned it, I don't know, I was just totally taken back by this image. It totally, in my opinion, the way that I interpret this image, it just seems totally heartbreaking to me, especially thinking of the context of where we're at, where we were at with COVID and where we currently at with COVID. You're looking at this image and you see, two hot dogs, side by side, one chair empty, one chair, one person in front of one of the hot dogs, holding up this cardboard sign that says "Happy Birthday, Dad, Mr. Dale, we miss you." That leads you, you could go a million different ways with this. Where's their dad? It's their birthday. Did he have an issue? Did he pass away? Is he on a trip? In the context of COVID, you might see this differently. Maybe the dad is in the hospital. Who knows? There's so many different ways. But the hot dog standing in front of an empty chair with this sign, was this their favorite restaurant? Did they go to this restaurant all the time together? There's so much that you can extract from this image, and I just think it's completely heartbreaking. And after we spoke to Wenju, she kind of explained that I think that she said that this was one of her friends. So it's different. She said that this is one of her friends, and I don't exactly remember what happened with the dad, but that's the funny part about it, because it's almost something completely separate. Because this is what that image meant to me. The story that I'm getting from this image is this heartbreaking story of loss and regret and family. That's the story that I'm extracting from this, and I'm sure a lot of other people would. But there's so many ways that you can tell these stories, even if it's not directly tying back to your specific life, which is just an example that I wanted to get from our project that I think is just really beautiful. And there's so many more beautiful images, which leads me to, why should we do this? Why is this important? Why is it something that we should think about doing? And I think, just looking back into what a photograph is, starting from the beginning, I think, we're human. And one of the reasons that we started this project was because we wanted to give our students the voice and the artistic opportunity to tell us what they're feeling, and to archive this moment in history so that future generations can tell us, can see what was really going on here. So why should we do this? Why should we tell stories through photographs? It's kind of like asking why should we live? Why should we create art? I think it's an essential part of you, telling the story of who you are, the story of what you're doing, the story of what you're going through, the story of anything you want to say, of heartbreak, of loss, of love, of anything. Getting a little bit more theoretical, but I think that it's just part of human nature to create and to tell stories, and just shifting your mindset from thinking of a photograph as something that you just snap on your iPhone or into, something that you think about and you put a little bit more extra thought in it, and you interpret in different ways, I think is crucial into you telling your story and just being constantly surrounded by beauty and overwhelmed by beauty. No matter where you go, you're seeing all of these stories, whether it's yours or the people around you. And what can a photograph be? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Camilla says we do it to create evidence of history.
Great point. Yeah, sorry, I have the chat blocked from this thing. It won't let me see it. But yes, that is a great point. We do it to create evidence of history, which is so important. We look back at these images. One of my favorite parts about taking images of my family too is because I remember back in the day, I didn't have a lot of pictures of my dad. My dad just doesn't like taking pictures. And now I've got, so many pictures of my dad, and I'm going to keep those forever, or of this moment with my family. there's a lot of, just like music, you know, I keep relating this back to different forms of media, but it's so similar, you know, and we don't think about photographs the way that we think about music or writing, but it's so similar. You know, you listen to a specific song and you're like, wow, I remember, you know, freshman year of high school, this is what this song reminds me of. The same thing with this images, you know, it'll take you back to that moment. So I definitely love that. But for the sake of time, just going to move on over here. So just really quickly, I wanted to take you over some important dates for our Stories project. If you want to be a part of this, you know, get one of these disposable cameras, you know, start thinking about photographic storytelling and tell your story through these images and through our podcast. You know, applications are actually open today. Today's the first day that our applications open. Applications are going to close on February 16th. We're going to choose applicants on March 9th. We're going to ship the cameras by March 19th. We will give you like an envelope to ship it back. You can ship the cameras back by April 2nd. And then from then we're going to be, you know, giving you the images and setting up recording dates on a you know, individual basis. But last thing I just want to share, I wanted to show you guys our website so you guys can see what this looks like and where to apply or how to apply. So really quick rundown. So this is our website for our project. This is the homepage. If you click here, you can order our summer 2020 book, which I think is really, really cool. If you want to own a piece of this book, which is another part of photography that I think is really important, is actually printing your work and holding your work in a physical form, you know, not just living online, you know, like actually holding this work, which is one of the reasons we really wanted to do this. So you can see a little bit of, this is the book that we created. We have our students' reflections here along with the image. This is their favorite image that they chose. And then we have more images after this, more images that our students took throughout the summer that we can go over. You guys can check that out whenever you'd like. If you go down here, you can see a little bit more about the project. You can meet our team, all of our teams, Rebecca Friedman and Laura Kurtzberg, who are in the audience today, I think, as well. Are all of our students that participated in this project. Let me just click that real quick. All of our students, you can check them out here. Alhana, Emily, Wenju, everybody who was here. You can check out their actual pictures, the images that they actually took. For example, if you want to see Claudia's pictures, you know, you can click on Claudia, and these are all of the images that Claudia took that captured her summer and everything that she was going through at the beginning of COVID.
Enrique, sorry to interrupt you really quickly. Camilla had a really good question. Is there any
Yeah.
major requirement for participating in the program or?
Great question. Yeah, it's open to all undergraduate students. So you don't have to be an honor student. You don't have to be any specific major. It's really just, you know, telling us about what you want to capture and what your story is like. And that's a really big, important part. We're opening this up to everybody. So it's really up to, there's no big requirement. It's just like how bad you mean you want to tell stories, I guess. But yeah, you can also read the reflections here. So you can check out the reflections. So if you want to read what students said about this project, which is another really interesting part, like Andrea mentioned earlier, a lot of the students really struggled with using the camera and not being able to see the images. Some of them drew out what they thought they might see. So that's another cool aspect of the project, is kind of this like mesh between old tech and you know, the 21st century, everything that we're going through. You can listen to the podcast here if you don't have Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music. If you don't have a subscription, you can listen to the podcast on our website, and then you can contact us here. But if you click the apply here button, it'll take you straight to our spring 2021 application. So you can fill out this application. This is how you can apply. It says all the information about what we expect from you, the timeline for the project, and yeah, just fill this out. We have a few essay questions here just so we can read, you know, a little bit more about you and make our decisions. And yeah, and that's pretty much the project. And like I said, you know, I really hope that you start viewing images a little bit differently, you know, moving forward. It really changed my life moving forward. I'm a total geek about this now, but it's a really beautiful thing, you know, when you start seeing all of these little details, you know, everywhere that you walk, and you start telling these stories, telling your story and telling the stories of the people around you through these images. So yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this and it's shifted your perspective even a little bit. And even if you join the project, or you pick up a disposable camera tomorrow, or you just look at your iPhone a little bit differently, you know, I hope you start telling your story, you know, because it's so important to document, especially right now, everything that we're going through in this really hectic time in our lives. I hope that you consider documenting and telling your story through these images. And yeah, Andrea, if you wanna close out and say anything, that'd be awesome too.
No, not really. No, I think one of from my own experience working in this project was amazing to see the pandemic through the eyes of our own students and these young people. For example, it was really funny to see how they struggled with just moving the camera for the next picture to be taken. A lot of them didn't know how to do that, and so that would crack me up, during the interview part. It really brings out really small moments that talk about what the human experience is about. Those really, really small moments where we can connect, where we are able to see our own experience reflected in others. So yeah, I hope that all of you apply, and I just wish I can get to know you better soon.
Definitely. I left out one last part. I just want to say I'm so sorry. Another thing that I think was really interesting that our students did with these images was that they used it as these really powerful tools as well, with everything that was going on in the summer with protests and the politics that was going on and home. They used them as artistic tools, as political tools, as cultural tools, and that's another way that you can view these images. Is using these images as something more powerful than just a standalone image. Which is really cool. And you'll see that when you see the images.
Absolutely. I bet we have some questions out there to get you guys started if you don't have one already. What was your most common question once students had the camera and they were just starting to use it? Like frequently asked question.
The how to move on to the next that frame. It took them forever to understand that they would take a picture and they had to move the, how do you call that?
Yeah, you have to roll the
roll. Yeah. Or when did it end?
Some of the counters were a little off sometimes. I think they said the counters on the camera, so they were kind of confused as to how many images they had left to take. Or typically it was 27. Yeah.
27, or that they would take a picture with their iPhone and then take another picture, and then it was very convoluted.
That makes sense though. I could totally see doing that, so I know what I'm capturing. It's not moving, changing, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Were there any themes that came about in your research, and putting that first book together that you'd like to share?
Oh man, some themes. I think more than anything, there was a lot of individual themes within each student's body of work that we spoke about in a lot of the podcasts. Like some of them, like for example, Amelia Raudales, that I'm sure some of you all know, she's super involved on campus. A lot of her images focused on service, and the theme was a lot happier than some of the other images, which also shows that the way that her personality seeps into the images that she took. Even the colors were different. The time that she decided to take the images, the locations, the people that was in it were different. So we saw that a lot in a lot of our students' work. There was some students that focused on mental health. A lot of mental health related images and stories behind their images. So I think more than anything, there was a lot of individual themes for each student, which was even more interesting, because it was really interesting seeing how every student is almost like their own little microcosm, of story. Everybody is, so it was really cool seeing that come out in their images.
Enrique, we've got a great question from Karis. And I have this question myself. So how did the students know when to capture a picture? Not being a big picture of myself, Kara says sometimes it's hard to know when it's a picture moment. So how did you guide students to figure out what is the appropriate moment to take a picture and what makes it worth taking?
That's a great question.
I think we told them that, they had a period of time where they were going to have the cameras with them and that they only had 27. And obviously the movement of the students was also constrained because it was during the lockdown. So it wasn't, their range of movement was not that great in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe what they were thinking was things that were repetitive in a way.
Yeah, we definitely saw that come up, because there was some students that moved a little bit more than others. But I think when it comes to this question, we kind of gave them some direction, but we also didn't give them as much direction as you'd think, because really I think that question is up to you. And when you take that image is up to you. We gave them a timeline, obviously, because we need to get the project going. But there were some students, we asked the students too in the podcast, in what time frame did you take the pictures. Some students took them in 3 days. Some students took the full 2 weeks. Some students took them all on one specific day, that they waited for. So it really depends on what you feel like. And I think that's, and like you said, like, not being too much into pictures yourself, this is the start of it, or just thinking about it for these 2 weeks in a different lens, just like, and that's the cool thing about having a camera in your hand. Once you have that camera in your hand, you're going to be like, is this image, or is this moment worth this picture? I have 27 frames, so I want to take this picture. And you're going to slow down, you're going to think about it a little bit more. But that when do you take the picture? I think that has to come internally, and that's the cool thing about the project, whenever you think is right to take the picture. If we told you when to take the picture, then it wouldn't be the same project. And that would also be really hard. We'd have to follow you around, maybe a drone or something.
I have a question. About, I would be the student that takes the 27 pictures the first day, and now I'm like, oh my God, I took that long. But I wanted to know, like, if you, since it was the general theme was the lockdown, now that we're transitioning into a more like outside world, is it that the theme, or the theme is not, like, it's not specific? I don't know.
It's not specific. It's the 2 weeks experience from your point of view.
Yeah, we're exploring, we want to continue doing this project. So for future iterations, we're thinking about different things that we can do in the future, but we definitely, since we're still kind of in the middle of all of this, there's still so many, because really you could do this project at any time. And even if it's not locked down, if it is locked down, it's just like a look into the lives of some of our students. So yeah, even though that we're getting hopefully a little bit better now, still seeing that transition, capturing this time, what's going on. There's so much happening in the world, in the country. So just seeing what your little window into the world looks like.
You guys mentioned that you guys mentioned this is going to be hopefully archived at the Wolfsonian. So who all are you thinking will have access to these stories later?
Everyone. It would be open to the, it would be open access to the public.
Yeah. And the website is already, it's open to everybody. It's live. It's up everywhere. So anybody can go in and read these reflections. Anybody can go in and hear the podcasts. The podcasts are up everywhere too. If you just look up Our Stories FIU on all of the big platforms, you'll find it. But yeah, we definitely want to make it as accessible as possible to everybody.
Awesome. Somebody else have a question? Anna does.
I'm of course going to come from the educator's perspective, because I'm thinking about this from like what we gain about how students learn about messages from producing it themselves. And I'm curious as to what you learned from this project as educators, and how this might inform the way you use storytelling in the classroom, both to have students learn, but also to have them create and produce so that they can understand how it's put together.
Well, to me, the student perspective is everything, because I live in my own head all the time, and I'm tired of my own perspective of what interests me, what does not interest me. So it's it moves the rug beneath you all the time. Just their like I was saying, just their interactions with the camera was something that to me was no-brainer, but it became a big deal. Or even the dealing with the frustration of the students that they could not see the images, and then how they were disappointed a few weeks later. They saw the picture and there was disappointment, but then there was joy again once they found that one picture that they had forgotten about really became stellar in their own point of view. So it's, you know, to me, it's like it's going on a journey through the student's eyes. And I don't know if I enjoy it as an educator, but I enjoy it as a human being. So I don't know.
Yeah. For me, from an education perspective, I'm not a professor or anything. I would love to be one day, but working for the Honors College as well. I think one thing that I learned education-wise, or just, you know, from my role at the Honors College and events and just the students that I interact with, I think at least half of these students from the first cohort were honor students. And I think something that was really interesting, whether they were honors or not, but I see this particularly more in like the honors population, is that like our students, you know, they want a lot of structure, you know, when it comes to assignments, or when it comes to you know, tasks, assignments and tasks that they're supposed to do. Like if you assign them an essay or a test, they really want it laid out. You know, they want to know exactly what they have to do to get the A, or to get the points necessary. And I think what this taught me more than anything as an educator is the value of unstructure sometimes, you know. And we do that a lot with our interdisciplinary courses in honors, like the Miami course. That's a little bit more, you know, it's like really, you know, out there. It's different. You're walking around. It's not traditional. So I think this taught me a lot about, you know, about how sometimes it's difficult to like not give exact instructions on what to do, or what to tell, or what to capture, but to see, you know, to see what students come up with, and to see, like Andrea said, the struggle of finding these stories, you know, from that kind of ambiguity, was really interesting.
So we have a couple of comments in the chat. Hang on, let me go back. I don't know if you can see them. So Karis is like, I honestly think this is so cool. Being used to storytelling through writing and music, photography would be a whole new adventure. Absolutely. And then Anna's like, yeah, this is totally accessible to anyone, pretty much. And then Camilla says she likes the freedom involved and the creativity instead of you defining exactly what they have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes, I mean, one thing, I know that I talk a whole bunch. This is like one of my favorite subjects. I'm so sorry, but I love that thing about freedom. I mean, I think that's something that's really difficult, and something that I think a lot of us learned even in lockdown. You know, it's like especially at the beginning when we were like really at home. It's like, okay, now you have all this time, but what are you going to do with it? And so it's like now you've got these 27 images, and you can take pictures of anything, but what are you going to take, or what story are you going to tell? So it's really it's something. It seems, I mean, it's really cool, but it is almost like daunting. It's daunting sometimes, you know. It's like, what are you going to take a picture of? And there's another part of, I love Gary Wintergrand. There's another part of this Gary Wintergrand documentary where one of his like mentors, I mean mentees, that a student that he mentored, talks about how he used to wait for assignments to go photograph. So when he didn't have an assignment, he wouldn't take pictures, and how Gary told him that he just needs to give himself his own assignment, that too many photographers wait to get assigned to do something. And I think that's exactly what we're doing here. You know, it's like you just have to go out and give yourself the assignment, you know, figure out the story that you want to tell, whether it's, you know, and it's beyond this project. So whether you're chosen for this project or you don't apply, or you do for the next round, whether you do this project or not, you know, it's you know, figuring out, you know, buying a camera, figuring out what you want to say, regardless of the structure of this project.
There's a question in the chat for you, Andrea. It says, what is one picture that spoke to you from this project and why?
I think there are two. One is a picture of a man swimming in a pool, and nothing necessarily interesting about that picture, but I always think it's Enrique. When I see that picture, I'm always like, why is Enrique in the pool in this project? And I continue to bring, it comes up to my mind all the time. But there's one other picture that I really love, and it's the picture that, and I can't remember who took this picture, but it's in Key Biscayne, and it's the picture of the palm trees, and there's a glass, and there's droplets on the, that's, to me, that's Enrique in the pool. But clearly he's not in that picture. But there's the one, and I can't, was it Wenju or
It was either Lydia
or
or
Catherine Wong?
No, it wasn't Catherine. See, see, as you can look at some of these came out underexposed. Some of these, it wasn't perfect, but that was part of the charm of the project. And students, you know, some of them were disappointed, some of them loved it.
I think it was Catherine.
No, I think it was Wenju.
Wenju.
I don't think Catherine had any. Yeah, this
one. Yeah, that one. That one. And I love this picture because it's you can see that there's something in between the viewer and the image. So there's this glass that has it's been that it's not see-through completely. So to me, this is my favorite picture from the entire cohort, I would say.
Awesome. That question was from Karis, so thanks, Karis. We have a few announcements to share with you guys as we're coming to the close of today's time. But first, I want to thank Andrea and Enrique so much for sharing with us today. So yay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.